Hello lovely people, welcome back to my channel. I'm Aunty Bubu from Style by Binta, and today in this video tutorial I'm going to be showing you how I made this trouser. It is a simple trouser, it's a pant trouser, but this particular one is going to be having elastic waistband together with a fancy rope or a jogger's rope, just as you can see, and it's going to be coming out as nice as this. If you follow this same process, I assure you that you have the same result. So if you're interested in content like this and you are coming across my video for the first time, I'd like you to please subscribe to this channel, like this video, turn on your notification button so as for you to get notified when I upload new videos. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is to place my fabric on 2 folds. So I'm going to be cutting for the front part of the trouser first. So I lay my fabric on 2 folds and I ensure it is well balanced so that I won't be short of fabric at any angle. So here are the things I'm going to be working with. So this is a jogger's rope and this is how it looks like, and it comes in different colors. I like different colors to make the trouser pop out, as in most cases I may not get the exact color of what I'm working with. But here are the elastics also. This elastic comes in different widths and they are quite. So the first thing I did was just to rule a straight line. Just as you can see, I ensured that I had a straight line both vertically and horizontally. So this is going to be a guide. So my measurement is going to be starting from this line. So the next thing I did was to divide the waist circumference divided by 4. So in this case, I'm working with 31 inches divided by 4 gave me 7.75, which is approximately 8. So I'm going to be using 8 inches. So because I did not measure the hip of my client, and I'm working for a man, so it's not so compulsory to measure the hip. I'm just going to be adding 2 inches to this 8 inches. So it's going to be giving me 10 inches. So I'm going to be working with 10 inches on this waistline. In case where you have the hip circumference, whatever you have at the hip divided by 4 is what you're going to be placing directly on this waistline. But if you did not measure the circumference of the hip of your client, then just go ahead and divide your waist by 4, then add 2 inches to it. So the next thing I did was to place my tape on the startup line, removing 1.5 inches from the tape. So I'm going to be starting the measurement for the crotch from 1.5 inches on my waistline. So I went ahead and I measured for the crotch. So for the crotch, whatever I have on the waist, I'm going to be adding an inch to it. So on the waist, I marked 10 inches, meaning I'm going to be adding 1 inch to 10 inches. So what I have is 11 inches. The reason why I'm removing this 1.5 is because I'm going to be replacing it with a band of another 2 inches. So by removing 1.5, I had already put back my stitch allowance to this waist part, so I don't need to add half-inch stitch allowance back to it. Every other vertical measurement is going to be having this reduction of 1.5 inches because I'm going to be having it back from my band. I went ahead and I make a point there, so I'm going to be ruling a straight line across it. So the 10 inches I had on the waistline, I replace it on the crotch line now. So because I'm not going to be working with the hip, I'm working for a man, and mostly we don't need the hip measurement or circumference for a man. So the next thing I did was to connect the 2 points together, just as you can see. The next thing I did was to extend my crotch line, just as you can see. So on this crotch line, I'm going to be imputing the lap straight up. You don't need to measure 3 inches down to measure for the lap separately. So all I did was to come to this crotch line itself, and I'm going to be marking the lap. Whatever I have as the lap circumference, I'm going to be dividing by 2. So for a trouser, apart from the waist and the hip, which we are going to be dividing by 4, every other measurement is going to be divided by 2 because they are in 2. Here the lap is 23 inches, so I divided by 2 and I had 11.5. I went ahead and I measured it, just as you can see. So here I came up by 3 inches just to get a perfect curve. So I went ahead and I blend the curve, just as you can see. So this is what it looks like. Also removing 1.5, I went ahead and I measured the full length. In this case, I'm working with a length of 35 inches. So I went ahead and I marked it. I'm going to be working with a fold allowance of 2 inches, and I went ahead and I marked it also. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to rule a straight line on it. So the next measurement I'm going to be imputing is the knee. If you measure the knee of your client, just impute it straight up. But if you didn't, all you have to do is to measure the distance between the crotch line and the full length, divide it by 2, come up by 3 inches, and you're good to go. That would be your new line. So the next thing I did was to make a point there, then I will rule a straight line on it, just as you can see. So the next thing I did was to label it. So I have my waistline, the startup line is also the waistline, then the crotch line, then the nail line, then the ankle line, which is the full length or the out seam line. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to measure whatever I have on my crotch line. So I'm going to be dividing it by 2, just as you can see. I had 11.5. I divided by 2 and I had 5 3/4. So I'm going to be marking the 5 3/4 on the crotch line, the nail line, and also the out seam line or the ankle line. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to connect from the center line to the nail line, then to the ankle line. So now I have the center of my front piece, just as you can see. The next thing I did was to measure for the calf. The calf is mostly 3 to 4 inches away from your knee line, bigger than their nail line. So if you just consider the knee line and cut straight up, you have a result that is tight at the calf but okay at the knee. So if in this case the person I'm working for here, the calf is not different from the nail, so I'm not going to be considering the calf in this case. But if you measure for the calf of your client and it's bigger, please work with it. So in this case we are still working with the nail line because there is no difference between the calf of my client and the nail. So in this case I'm working with 15 inches for the nail, so I went ahead and I divided it into 2, which is going to be giving me 7.5. So I am still going to be dividing the 7.5 into 2 again. This is just to get the center. So 3 3/4 is going to be going to each side of the line, which is eventually going to be giving me 7.5 or 7.5, just as you can. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to come down to my hemline, and I'm going to be doing the same thing. Here I'm working with 14 inches. So I'm going to be dividing 14 by 2, which is 7. So 7 divided by 2 is going to be giving me 3.5 also. So I'm going to be placing it exactly on each side. So I went ahead and I placed the 3.5 on both sides. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to connect my points together, just as you can see. So at this waistline, I came down by half of an inch and I blend it into the waist. So this is the front I'm going to be working with for the trouser, and as you can see, it came out really nice. So next thing I'm going to be doing is to cut it out. For this fold allowance, I went ahead and I cut around it to have excess, because I can't just cut exactly what I have on the ankle on the fold allowance, so that I won't run short of fabric while stitching it together. So I folded it up, I drew my straight line again. So I'm going to be measuring 3.5 inches on both sides. So I make a point there and I'm going to be marking it out also, and I'm going to be cutting it out. So I lay it in such a way that where my waistline was initially is now where the ankle line is, just as you can see. So I'm going to be arranging it in such a way that I have some space at the other edge, because that is where I'm going to be imputing my stitch allowance. As you know, I did not add any sewing allowance to the front pattern. I'm going to be adding it all to the back. So the crotch extension I use for the back is 3 inches. So I make a point there and I rule a straight line to it. So for the waistline, the extension I did was 2 inches. So I make a point there also, just as you can see. So I just went ahead and I connected with a line from the waistline to my new extension, just as you can see. So from that part, I'm going to be coming up by 1.5 inches. You can do 2 inches if the person is big at the back side, but for this tutorial my client is okay with 1.5 or even 1 inch. So I make a point there. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to rule a straight line downwards my first crotch line curve, just as you can see. So the next thing I did was to connect new height for the back to the waistline, just as you can see. So the next thing I did was to mark out my crouch curve, just as you can see. So I blend it out to create the back curve. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to come to the nail line and I measure 2 inches. I also measure the 2 inches at the hem line also. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to put the points together. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is just to cut it out, just as you can see. So the next thing I did was to mark the wrong side so as for me not to get it all mixed up, because most of this fabric comes in a very similar look. Both the inside and the other side looks alike. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to cut the pockets. So in this case, I'm not going to be managing pockets. I'm just going to be using the fabric itself for the pocket. The length of the pocket is 14, while the width is also 14 when you open it. So when I place it on fold like this, the width is going to be 7, while the length is constant. Is either you have the length of 14 by the width of 14 when you open it up, or the length of 14 by the width of 7 when you place it on fold. So I need 2 of these because the pocket is going to be on the both sides of my front piece. So I went ahead and I cut another piece for it, just as you can see. So to fix this pocket to the trouser itself, I have to take the 2 front part of my trouser, and I'm going to be marking from the waistband downwards towards the out seam side. I'm going to be marking 7 inches, and I will make a notch there, and along the waist too, from that out seam side inwards, I'm going to be marking 3 inches. My camera omitted that part, but I'm going to be showing it later. So I cut out 2 pieces of stay, and I measured it 7 inches by 3 inches also. So this is what I had. So from one edge, I marked half of an inch, and I'm going to be slanting from that half of an inch upwards to the 3 inches that I had earlier marked, and I cut it out just as you can see. So this is what I have. I have a slanted shape at one side, and at the other side it is a straight shape that I have. So I went ahead and I placed the fusible interface or my stay on the trouser itself. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to give it a good press. So I iron it out, and this is what I have. So the next thing I did was to remeasure my 7 inches and the 3 inches, and I gave it a notch in case they stay past the 7 inches a bit. It doesn't really matter, just give it another notch at the 7 inches, which is on the fabric itself. And also at the waist, I marked the 3 inches and I gave it a notch. So it's just like a quarter of an inch notch. It's not up to half. So I'm going to be folding it up from that 3 inches on the waist to the 7 inches in a slanted way, just as the stay was slanted. I'm going to be following that shape again, and I'm going to be giving it a good press. So this is what I have. You can see my shape is already formed. This is going to be the exact pocket opening where the hands is going to be inserted. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to pick one of the pockets that I had already cut, and I'm going to be placing it on this side, which is the pocket opening side. So I'm going to ensure that the front side is facing me, while the back side or the wrong side is facing the wrong side of the trouser itself. So the next thing I did was to align the side of both the pocket and the trouser together. Then I'm going to be flipping it over together at that triangular part at the edge of the trouser, just as you can see. You can give it a good press here to make it stay, or you follow my process, which does not need ironing. So at the waist side, I will measure 3 inches because my fold initially to form that triangular shape, which I folded inwards, was 3 inches. So I will be replacing that 3 inches on the other side of the pocket piece, just as you can see. So I went ahead and I measured 3 inches. So I make a mark there. You can also notch it very tiny. So at that waistline, I'm going to be having 3 inches left out of the pocket on the other side, while the length is going to remain 7 inches. So the next thing I did was to notch the pocket at the 7 inches, placing it together side by side on the trouser itself at that side. I also notch the pocket at the sides at the 7 inches where the trouser itself is notched at that very side. So the notch are now equal together at the side. So to keep this pocket part stable beneath the trouser itself, if you're not going to be ironing it, then all you have to do is to place it beneath the trouser itself like this, and I'm going to be stitching behind this line created on the trouser itself. So on the sewing machine, I'm going to be repeating some of the things I said for emphasis sake. Okay, here is the pocket itself. So I'm going to ensure that the front side is facing me, while the back side or the wrong side is facing the wrong side of the trouser itself, just as you can see. So I'm going to be aligning the sides together like I said earlier. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to notch at the 7 inches. It's already notched, but I'm going to repeat it. Necessarily not going to be cutting it this time around, but I'm going to be showing it for emphasis sake, just as I said. So at this part, I'm going to be notching 1/4 inch. You can as well fold it together following the shape on the trouser itself and give it a good press. But I just want to show you, you don't have to do that. You can just stitch on it behind this line created on the trouser itself, not in front of the line, behind. This part is going to be hidden eventually. It's not going to be seen on the right side. So I went ahead and I followed 1/8 inch, which is a very short distance away from this line, away from the line, the triangular line created from ironing the stay to the trouser side, just as you can see. I'm going to be stopping at that notch part. This is what I have, very close to it but not on it. So the next thing I did is to top stitch on it, folding the part that's supposed to go inwards from the ironing. I followed that triangular part and folded it in. So flipping this part back inside together with the pocket that has already been attached, I'm going to be top stitching. I'm going to be using 1/4 inch. Don't do more than 1/2 inch. 1/4 inch is still okay. And I'm going to be starting from the waist side down to where the notch is also. For a beginner, you might want to chuck it down to get a even stitch all the way down. So this is what I have. So to keep this edge neat, you can weave it and you can fold it. So I don't want it to be too bulky, so I'm just going to go ahead and weave it. After weaving it, and as you can see, is more neater and it won't fray like this. So the next thing I did was to flip the pocket open, keep it open, laying it flat like this. So I went ahead and I stitched around the part that I just weaved, just as you can see. I ensure that my fabric, even the pocket, the trouser itself, is well laid out so that I won't mistakenly stitch on it. So this is what I have on the inside, as you can see. So the next thing I did was to flip the pockets over each other, ensuring that at that waist part I have my 3 inches and at the down part I have my 7 inches on each other like that. So this is going to reveal the excess that I have at the pocket side. So I went ahead and I trim it off. So at the pocket opening side, at that very edge, I'm going to be measuring 7 inches or so to make it equal with the other side at that part. So I went ahead and I marked the 7 inches and I gave it a notch, so they are now equal together. I can bring them together at that edge and stitch on it subsequently. So the next thing I did was to hold the pocket wrong side facing wrong side, just as you can see. So I'm going to be stitching from the right side, like you as you can see. So I went ahead and I set it to the machine. So the next thing I did was to divide the space I have here down at the bottom of the pocket like this into two, and I make a point there. So the next thing I did was to come up at the other side by 3 inches. Then I make a curve, just as you can see. This is just to get a curved pocket at that down part. It's not compulsory. So I went ahead and I stitched around this by 1/2 inch, and this is what I have. So at that notched part where my stitch for the pocket opening ends, I'm going to be taking the machine foot up, then I'm going to be stitching outside. Then I went ahead and I notched behind the stitch. So I went ahead and I cut the excess I have around this pocket side, just as you can see. So the next thing I did was to flip the pocket to the other side, just as you can see. So this is what I have. At this point, you need to measure the 3 inches on the waistline inwards, and the pocket opening should start from that 3 inches. So the next thing I did was to arrange the pocket beneath very well. Then I went ahead and I top stitch where the pocket opening ends, just as you can see. This is just to secure the pocket from shifting around. So the next thing I did was to flip the pocket over, just as you can see. So I have access to the inside part. I'm supposed to iron this out, but I'm sort of in a hurry. So I'm going to be pressing it out with my finger. Then I went ahead and I top stitched by 1/4 inch. This is just to double secure this pocket at the side. So this is what I have on the outside, and So here is the little about 1 inch that we have at this waist part. I'm eventually going to be trimming it off. This is just because I didn't use the trouser to shape the sides and the upper part of my pocket while cutting it. I just cut 14 by 14 just as you have seen earlier. So I'll have to trim it off. But before I do so, I went ahead and I top stitch the pocket down at that waist part. So the next thing I did was to trim all the excess I have at this waistline part off, just as you can see. So this is what I have as my result, and like this I'm done with my pockets, and I'm going to be repeating the exact process for the other side. So I repeated the same procedure for the other pocket. So I brought the two front piece together. This is what I have. So I placed them right side facing right side, and I'm going to be stitching along the crotch line just as you can see. So the next thing I did was to place the back piece, which I had earlier joined at the crotch part 2, which is the center back also. So I laid the front piece on top of it, right side facing each other. Then I went ahead and I aligned the crotch part together just as you can see. So I'm going to be stitching from the crotch down to one leg and from the crotch down to the other leg. Then I went ahead and I stitched on the sides of the pocket, but at this point you have to measure out what you have to confirm with the measurements of your client. But going by the seam allowance that I added from the cutting of the fabric, all I had to do was to stitch ½ inch all around. Checking the measurement is still going to be the size of my client. So how to make the band and fix it to this trouser has been made separately. The link is popping up already here. I'd like you to check it out and watch it. It's a more detailed tutorial. I couldn't add it to this video because of the length of the video was already much, so I like you to go check it here. So the next thing I did was to fold the M parts by the inches that I needed. After confirming that my length is accurate, so I went ahead and I fold the remaining parts inwards just as you can see. In this case I'm just going to be using Emi gum to keep it down. I'm not going to be stitching on it. So here is my result, and as you can see it is so perfect and neatly made. If you give it a trial, you're going to get this exact result following my very step. So this is what I have, and here comes to the end of this tutorial. So the final thing I'd like you to do for me, if you have watched to this stage, is to please like this video, subscribe to this channel, turn on your notification button for more of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next video. Bye.